That's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
The crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
David Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's a flag. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened?
America is football. Football
is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass. For the moment in time, I don't give a damn. Oh my God!
No!
You love this.
30 to 27.
No!
Chiefs win. Chiefs
No!
win 30 to 20.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Friday night edition of the Only Football Podcast. I'm super excited about today's episode because I think we're going to cover two really important topics. One is going to be each top priority for each AFC team. I guess that's the best way to say it. And then we're going to talk about which quarterbacks are most at stake for losing the starting job. Okay. And I think it's going to be a fun one. And you might hurt some feelings here and there because it is a sensitive subject. Talking about quarterbacks taking over for another quarterback usually involves that quarterback losing. I would say 100% of the time it does. So this might, hurt some feelings there. But we have to predict it because I'm making us. And when I say us, I mean me. So strap in. Let's not get sensitive here tonight. It's going to be a good one. So we're going to start with the biggest remaining offseason priority for each AFC team. Okay. Much of the 2024 offseason is in the rear view mirror with the majority of top free agents off the market and the draft complete. However, there's still some pressing matters for each team to address before 24 NFL season kicks off. So, of course, as soon as the NFL season ends, we have a long list of priorities, right? Then you have free agency, then you get the draft, then you get undrafted free agents, rather. And now we kind of come back to this place and reevaluate what do we actually need for each team to and for this, we're only going to be talking about the AFC, but which AFC teams haven't addressed certain problems and they need to before the NFL kicks off September 5th. So that's what we're going to be taking a look at. We got Nick in the chat, Russell Wilson losing his starting job in back-to-back seasons. I'm not going to say anything, but I might be bringing that up in a little bit. And look, it's going to be a rough go because a lot of people are probably going to just say that I'm a Russell Wilson hater. Although I do want him to succeed. I don't want him to succeed week 2. And I don't want him to look so good that we look bad. But I don't want to see him get benched, right? It would be cool if he had a bounce back year. But it also wouldn't be cool because then it would look like we're the problem. And of course, I'm just being honest. I don't want that, even if it's true. I want to hide it, disguise it, throw it under the rug, like a dysfunctional relationship. But in all reality, Russell Wilson's on an AFC team. So, I mean, if he was an NFC team, I could be like, oh, I want him to go to the Super Bowl. Can't say that. He's on an AFC team. So we're going to go through these AFC teams and we're going to talk about the remaining offseason priority for each of these teams. There's still time, right? It's the end of May. We have June, July, August, and that's it. So there's still enough time for these teams to address the needs that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to start with a team that I just read, I think, a couple days ago when I made a list of the most complete teams in the NFL. A team that came in at number 2, the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, but even the best teams still have an area or some kind of way that they could improve their game. And for the Baltimore Ravens, it's going to be adding to the offensive line. Okay, you can't judge the Ravens roster until the closer to the start of the season. No one does a better job of continuing to find cheap, capable talent than Baltimore's front office does. And they've been great at this for, it seems like, my entire lifetime. If one area stands out as a question mark at this stage, it's the offensive line. The right tackle job in both guard spots appeared to be up for grabs. Andrew Voorhees, who sat out his rookie season with an injury, and Ben Cleveland, who only had 7 starts in 3 years, are currently in line for the guard spots. Both of them inexperienced. One of them coming off an injury. You just don't like those options. They do have a 2nd-round pick in Roger Rosengarten, who could start at right tackle, and Josh Jones, who can play guard and tackle. You could swipe one of the starting spots or play a role, a swing role. But here's the thing. We have seen so many times that you can have the most complete roster, but if you don't have the offensive line solidified, you're not going to be that great, right? Eventually, those roosters are coming home to hatch. The chickens are coming home to hatch? You know what I'm saying, right? You can disguise it, but eventually you're going to have issues, whether it's, let's say you already have a mediocre, subpar offensive line, and then one of your guards goes down with an injury, and now you're just forced to throw in, like, honestly, Andrew Voorhees and Ben Cleveland. These are the inexperienced guys that normally would come in if there was an injury. We're talking about these guys starting off the bat, let alone the depth if one of them, God forbid, got hurt. So, yeah, I think the perfect example of this is the New York Jets, right? They had a great roster, a great team, all of it put together, but then Hard Knocks came out. And it was funny because the day before this episode was released, I came on the podcast and I said, look, this is a serious problem. This offensive line is not good. Like, Aaron Rodgers can only do so much if he has, seconds to throw the ball. Now, your more experienced quarterbacks tend to help the offensive line a lot. Think of Tom Brady, right? He was the least sacked quarterback his last season in the NFL, but he was also very quick decision maker. The ball was getting out of his hand faster than any other quarterback. Manning did the same thing, right? You can't take sacks. Your body just can't handle it at 40 years old. You don't have speed and athleticism to get yourself out of situations. So you have to rely on, the mental acuity to make quick decisions. And this is kind of what Sean Payton's going to try to get out of Bo Nix. Not to make this about the Broncos, but Sean likes his quarterbacks to make quick decisions. Is Lamar Jackson there yet? He's a great quarterback. He's won 2 MVPs. He likes to run. He's slimmer, right? He did lose some weight, it was reported, which is funny. Sorry, just ate a steak. Which is funny because last offseason, he showed up at 225 pounds, or maybe it was the one before that. And everybody was like, oh, Lamar Jackson's 225. Is he going to lose his speed? Well, evidently, he's losing his weight because maybe he did lose some of that speed. I'm not sure. But he has gained weight, has lost weight. Point being is Lamar Jackson does have the athleticism to cover up some of the blemishes of a subpar offensive line. But how ideal is that down the road, right? You got Zay Flowers. You got these guys running routes, but you got to literally run for your life. And then while you're running, you get into this habit of panicking, right? This happened with the Broncos in Russell Wilson's first season with a depleted offensive line. It was like Justin Fields in his rookie season. The offensive line does such a poor job moment after moment after snap after snap. Eventually, the pocket's clean and your quarterback's running, feeling imaginary pressure. It's muscle memory. So, yes, any quarterback, Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers, whoever you're using as an example, they all need a solid pocket to throw the football from. And this offensive line situation right now with the Baltimore Ravens has not, in my opinion, been addressed. Okay. So if Ronnie Stanley, who hasn't played for more than 13 games in a season since 2019, goes down, things could get dire. And the GM, Eric DaCosta, should add veteran help before week 1. And a guy that sticks out to me is our guy, Dalton Reisner. He left Denver. He went to Minnesota. He had one of the highest PFF grades. He's good in the run game. He's good in the pass game. He wants to get paid, pretty elite money because he considers himself a pretty elite player, and his PFF grade kind of backs that up. But if Baltimore goes into this season, just like Aaron Rodgers did, the day after I said that on the Only Football podcast, there was a Hard Knocks episode, and it was about a joint practice that didn't go very well. And Saleh went into the locker room and said, we can have the best quarterback in the world. We can have the best team in the world. None of it matters if you guys don't protect him. And only 4 snaps into the regular season, Aaron Rodgers was gone for the year. Okay. The Bengals had been trying to address their offensive line for many years, right? Because the Bengals went to the Super Bowl with a terrible offensive line. Joe Burrow was running for his life that whole entire postseason, and they tried to address it. It didn't go very well. Joe Burrow got hurt. You could go down the list, and it's not a coincidence that the teams that are playing late into the season generally have a pretty good offensive line. So when you talk about Baltimore adding Derrick Henry, right, a veteran running back who could only benefit from a good offensive line, okay, how effective is he going to be? I mean, you're talking about a guy that's going from 5 yards a carry to 3 yards a carry if you have a bad offensive line. If you can get that initial hole, Derrick Henry can pick up some speed, and that guy is a train when he gets rolling. So I gotta say, for the Baltimore Ravens, they need to still figure out. I get it. Great team, great roster. Reigning MVP. It's not going to matter if they don't figure out a better plan at offensive line. The Buffalo Bills. Okay, this is a interesting one that is kind of close and dire to my heart. They need to decide if Von Miller can recapture his previous form. Von Miller took a pay cut to remain in Buffalo this offseason. And real quick, the Hurricane, happy to have you in here, he said the best example is the Lions with their offensive line. And I know they have, Penei Sewell, and I think they had Graham Glasgow, but still some room for improvement. Solid roster. If they can get that line better, they can go far. A great comment there. So Miller took a pay cut to remain in Buffalo this season. Even with the $8.5 million guaranteed, though, he's not a lock to make the final roster if the club doesn't see improvement from the future Hall of Famer. Okay, things move swiftly in the NFL, and Miller hasn't earned a Pro Bowl nod since 2019. That seems like a really long time ago, right? In 12 games last season, he didn't generate a sack. He earned 12 pressures on 164 pass rush snaps. He had 3 tackles. The hope is that being further removed from his 2022 knee injury can get the edge rusher back into form, kind of like when Saquon Barkley returned from his knee injury. It was actually year 2 that you saw him get back to his regular form. But Saquon Barkley is 24 years old. This is not a guarantee for a guy that's 35 years old in Von Miller. And if Miller can't be productive in a rotational role behind Greg Rousseau and AJ Espinilla, it could be time for Buffalo to move on from Von Miller and him to come back to Denver on a really cheap deal. What'd you say? I didn't say that. Bill in the chat. Hey, yo, what's up, fam? Happy to have you in here, Bill. And we are going over right now each team's top priority this offseason. Not the offseason that you're thinking, though. Not the end of last season. Boom. We're talking about post-free agency, post-draft, post-unrestricted free agents. As of right now, what these teams still on paper need to address before September 5th NFL season kicks off. So for the Baltimore Ravens, we just talked about their offensive line needs a lot of work. Ben Cleveland and Andrew Voorhees, who sat out his rookie season, are in line to be starters. And if one of these players goes down, they still have questions at tackle. If Ronley Stanley, who hasn't played for more than 13 games in a season since 2019, if or more likely when he goes down, things could get dire in Baltimore. And we were just talking about how important that offensive line is. Then we move to the Buffalo Bills, and Von Miller is the big question mark. It's possible that Buffalo would move on from Von Miller, and Von Miller is a really tough player to gauge for a couple of reasons. A, he's a Hall of Famer. Okay, so he has a ton. We've seen his ceiling. No, he's not going to be, 2015 form. But at the same time, that 2015 Super Bowl, Von Miller had a guy on the other side of the football that taught him a lot about pass rushing. Okay, and that was DeMarcus Ware, right? Hall of Famer. And at the time, the Cowboys were kind of where Buffalo is with Von Miller. But he was a big reason we won the Super Bowl. He was a really solid person to have on the other side. So Von Miller, that's what makes it tricky. You don't want to get rid of him and then see another team, get, oh man, that guy still had 3 good years in him. That guy's got 12 sacks, So this is what makes it a little tricky. Plus, you add in the injury, all right? He's dealt with injury concerns. In 2022, he had the knee injury. I said Saquon Barkley as an example, but Saquon Barkley wasn't 35 years old. He's going 2 years removed from that knee surgery. This is when we expect him to bounce back. So you factor in the injury, kind of mixed with the age, mixed with who Von Miller has been his whole career. And of course, you got to factor in the $8.5 million guaranteed he's making, even though Von Miller did take a pay cut to remain in Buffalo. This makes the situation very tricky. And the Buffalo Bills are probably going to try to figure out before week 1 if Von Miller is somebody that can bring value to this team, or if it's time for Buffalo to move on from Von Miller. And Von Miller is definitely not done in the NFL. I can guarantee you that. So it's Buffalo or it's somewhere else for Von Miller. But Buffalo needs to figure out what's going on with Von Miller. Last year, he also quietly dealt with an arrest. He was arrested for... He's got this thing with his girlfriend. Von Miller is attracted to toxic women, it seems like, which, whatever, that's not an uncommon thing. But Von Miller was arrested, and I think it had something to do with assaulting his pregnant wife, or his pregnant girlfriend, excuse me. But then the charges were dropped. I mean, when you're dealing with coming back from an injury, the last thing you need is off the field distractions. And it may come to a point where the Bills don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. But I still believe in Von Miller. I think if he can get focused and he can get healthy, I think he can still contribute, 12 to 15 sacks. So tell me if that's a player you would get rid of. My money is on Von Miller, but this is really his final year to prove it. You can't be 36 years old and hadn't been to a Pro Bowl since 2019, haven't generated a sack all of last season. It has to happen right now. It's now or never. And I know Von Miller doesn't want to go out like this. So I think he's going to be all right. And we got Bill and Jake in here. And Bill said, hey, yo, what's up, fam? Jake said, here, Bubba, never thought I would relate to Von Miller. Me likey toxicity. Don't we all like a little toxic relationship every once in a while? Moving on to the Cincinnati Bengals. And if you notice, I've gone over, some of the top teams in the NFL, because these are generally the harder teams to diagnose what they need to fix because they're such solid teams like the Ravens and the Bills. We're going to stick with another powerhouse team, in my opinion, with maybe the second best quarterback in the league in Joe Burrow. And we're going to talk about their top priority right here. Stay healthy. That's their top priority. Cincinnati spent the entire summer concerned about Joe Burrow's calf injury last offseason, which lingered into the season. If you remember, the Bengals came out losing. I think they were like 1-4. And then there was a switch flipped, which isn't uncommon. Every single one of Joe Burrow's seasons, including Zach Taylor's rookie season as the head coach, I think it was a Thursday night game against the Jags, like week 5, 3 years ago. And it looked like the Bengals were just the Bengals I've known my whole life. And then all of a sudden, against Jacksonville, something switched on Thursday night. The Jags had a pretty good lead in that game, and the Bengals came back and won. And then the Bengals just really turned that page and ended up going to the Super Bowl and playing the Rams. And then the season after, the expectations were really high because, of course, you had a Bengals team that had a terrible offensive line, still made it to the Super Bowl. And then they addressed that offensive line during the offseason. So, of course, the expectations were the Bengals are going to probably go back to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow's an animal. And they started like 1-4 again. And then I even remember an interview with him on Colin Cowherd, like, I don't know why this is happening to us. Okay. Then you go to last season, and this is Joe Burrow dealing with that calf injury. And you could tell right away that this calf injury was actually an issue, right? It's one thing as a fan to see an injury on paper and say, oh, he's dealing with this, but he's probable to play, right? That's really what people look at. Doubtful, questionable. Those are the big two, or out, right? And there's a habit of fans of looking at an injury report and really only having two groups of people, right? Doubtful, he's not playing. And questionable, oh, it looks like he's going to practice on Thursday. He could play by Sunday, okay? But what we don't consider often is that, yes, he's going to play, but he's going to be a fraction of who he is, right? You just expect, if Joe Burrow can be on the field, I expect Joe Burrow, right? I expect the greatness of Joe Burrow, but that's not always the case. And when you're dealing with a calf injury on your planting foot as a quarterback, you could just tell that something wasn't right with Joe Burrow. He was, there's a little bit of power off of his throws and stuff like that. So finally, he got healthy, I think around week 4, and then Joe Burrow looked really good, and the Bengals looked like they were coming back, right? And then, of course, Joe Burrow went down with a really bad injury. He injured his wrist, ending his season. And I think if you're a Bengals fan, you're just like, is it too much to ask the football gods that one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL stays healthy, before games are even played? I mean, Joe Burrow, I went to the NFL Combine, and I was sitting in front of Bengal fans, and I talked to them about the Bengals, and that fan base really believes that when Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals can beat any team in the NFL. But that if is becoming a little bit bigger year by year. And I really don't want Joe Burrow to become, a player that can't stay healthy. He's just simply too much fun, too good to watch. I thought the Jake Browning story coming in as a backup last year, and so much talent on this team that he was even able to get them, into a playoff picture towards the end of the season. But of course, it's nothing compared to seeing Joe Burrow on the field. And he's got long hair now. I don't know if you saw that. Joe Burrow is rocking the long hair. I think this is the age Tom Brady did it too. Look, injuries happen. The 2023 Bengals were riddled on both sides of the ball, ultimately leading to them missing that postseason. The last time Burrow suffered a season-ending injury, though, he did bounce Cincy back to the Super Bowl the following year. There has been some attrition, but the Bengals have the talent on the roster to make a similar run, provided that the key parts of this team stays healthy. Top priority for the Bengals, just stay healthy. We got the Merkin in here. Hopefully Burrow doesn't end up like Andrew Luck. That is actually not a bad comparison. Nick said, the football gods. Yes. Is it too much to ask Bengal fans? LOL. The football gods. Yes. Is it too much to ask Bengal fans to stay healthy? And then Bill said the long hair was a fake, Kyle, just FYI. It was? Man, I got kind of into it. I liked it. Man, the internet these days. You just can't trust what you're seeing out there. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, there's no way his hair grows that fast. I even went back and saw like pictures of him last year, and I was looking at his hair length, and I'm like, it was kind of long. So I guess, he wasn't in the spotlight dealing with an injury. I convinced myself, even though in my heart, I knew hair doesn't grow that fast. So thank you for pointing that out. Okay, for the Cleveland Browns, it's to get Deshaun Watson acclimated to new offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. Okay. Yes, head coach Kevin Stefanski is going to remain the play caller and the offensive leader, but Cleveland expects Dorsey to play a more significant role with Watson. And I believe Cleveland that lost their quarterback? No. The Bengals lost their offensive coordinator to the Titans head coaching job. That's what I was thinking of. Anyway, it's no secret that in 2 abbreviated seasons with the Browns, talking about Deshaun Watson, the quarterback has been a big disappointment. Now, that first year was just, he was dealing with the suspension, the 11-game suspension, just in time for him to play the Houston Texans coming out of that suspension, coincidentally. And we kind of said, okay, well, he's going to take some time. He hasn't played football in like 2 years at this point. So, of course, it's going to take some time for him to get back into the groove of things. Kind of similar to Michael Vick, but just not as long of a break. And then last year, I had the Browns in my top five, and everyone was laughing about it. But I was like, this defense is legit. If Deshaun Watson can even return to, 80% of what he was, this is a team that could probably go to an AFC championship game, and which would explain the fact that last year ran better with Joe Flacco than Watson pre-injury, because Joe Flacco is kind of already in football form. Watson continues to keep missing big chunks of playing time, and it makes you wonder if he's going to be able to get back to where he was. And the Bengals, of course, hope that he can. $240 million guaranteed dollars going to the guy. But that was the type of money that the guy in Houston should have got. Okay. That guy hasn't showed up in Cleveland yet. And I'm telling you, right before his injury, it was coming together. There were spurts and moments where it seemed like Deshaun Watson is back. Like, I honestly, if this was kind of like increasingly going up, before the injury, I would say that he was 1 week away from fully being back. And of course, that's when the injury happened. So Ken Dorsey helped usher Josh Allen's development in Buffalo as a quarterback coach and a passing game coordinator. With Stefanski calling plays, Dorsey can focus on getting the best out of Watson in this year. And then more struggles from the highly paid quarterback, and it'll be the panic button in Cleveland, right? People are definitely going to, when you get paid that much, trust me, we know with Russell Wilson, when you get paid that much, it really can divide a locker room if you're not that guy. Like, if you're going to get paid like that guy, you got to be that guy. And I'm not even talking about how the fans are going to feel, dealing with all that off the field type of stuff. And then you also suck. It's like, dude, if you're going to, I'm not going to make that joke, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to smoke crack, you got to be Michael Irvin. You can't smoke crack and, be Jordan Addison. You got to be at a certain level for people to, and I'm not saying it's right, but that's the way the NFL's always been, right? Michael Vick did the thing with the dogs. He said he was sorry and he was too good for people to be like, I'm not hiring a dog killer. Do you think he's still fast? Like, we'll take Michael Vick. So Deshaun Watson, people have turned the blind eye, but he has not been anything that he was advertised to be yet. Can he do it this season with a new offensive coordinator and Ken Dorsey working together with Kevin Stefanski? Moving on to, we got Bill. He said they gave him that was Anakin Skywalker hair. Okay. They did a really good job on that Photoshop. Nick said they got to sacrifice some massage workers for Watson to be good again. And Bill said, Nick on fire tonight. Deshaun Weinstein got a bag and then promptly realized he doesn't have to try anymore. Oh God, let's hope not. No, I think he'll be back, and I think he's going to get back into form. That's actually my prediction. All right, next up, we have this team that I barely like, the Denver Broncos. Just kidding. Top priority. You probably could guess this one. Get Bo Nix up to speed. Denver could elect to start Jared Stidham under center for a few weeks, but the way Sean Payton's been talking about Nix, the Broncos are expected to start Bo Nix from day one. He started 61 games in college. He's 24 years old. He's not a duckling who needs time to get his feet wet. He's ready to go right now, and he's played in multiple different systems. There's going to be growing pains, especially when you play defenses like Seattle on the road with that crowd noise, and then you play the Steelers defense week 2. You got the Jets week 4. Like, Bo Nix is going to be thrown into the fire. Okay. Like with all players transitioning to the NFL, but Denver selected Nix 12th overall to help this team turn around, right? If he's going to be that guy, he's got to go out there and get live reps. Okay. Peyton Manning was actually just talking about this yesterday, and he said that his first season, he said, I went 3-13, most interceptions by a rookie quarterback ever. And he goes, those reps were so valuable. He was like, the next season we went 13-3. That's a huge switch. And now Eli Manning, his rookie year, I think he played in 7 games and he was a backup in 10 or 6-10. And Eli said the 6 games that he started in, he got more experience than the 10 games that he sat behind starting quarterback. So that experience is valuable, even if he's got to get thrown into the fire. The thinking is, for a lot of people, it's like, if you're good enough to play in this league, you can get thrown into the fire and still find a way to sharpen your game, right? Get ready on the way, right? If you have a wife or a girlfriend, you know that there's been times where you got to drive to a party or a birthday party, something like that, and you're running out of time, and you say, hey, you're going to have to get ready on the way. Grab the makeup bag, put the mirror down. We're going to get ready on the way, and that's what Denver's going to have to do. All right? Bo Nix is going to learn how to get ready on the way, and I think why certain quarterbacks maybe don't respond well to getting thrown into the fire. And then when it doesn't work out, people blame the franchise for throwing him into the fire. But is it really their fault? Well, kind of. I think it's because a lot of times the teams that have, let's say, Vic Fangio or a defensive-minded head coach that are not quarterback friendly, that throw a young quarterback, because let's face it, a lot of these coaches that aren't quarterback friendly are picking really high in the draft for a reason. It's because they're not quarterback friendly in a quarterback driven league. So I think when you have a player that is going to get thrown into the fire and you have Sean Payton in the same room as him, that makes a world of a difference than throwing Drew Lock into the fire with Vic Fangio. All right. So I do think that is all, Sean Payton gives me enough confidence to say, yeah, throw him into the fire. I don't think he's going to have his confidence destroyed. I know too much about this guy. I know how he views himself. I know the high IQ, the quick decisions. And yeah, he needs those live reps in order to continue to get better, right? Bo Nix fits Sean Payton's system. So I expect him to be the starter week 1. And that's going to be Denver's whole priority from now until week 1. Get Bo Nix ready for that week 1 game at Seattle. And a solid take, Nick. So Bill agreeing that Deshaun Watson doesn't have to try anymore because he got his money. And man, that don't cry about that, Browns fans. Hopefully that's not a fact. That's just an opinion. Maybe he'll be what he was. But let's talk about the team that he was on, the Houston Texans. The top priority for the Texans is to figure out if Blake Fisher can handle the starting right tackle duties. We've talked about offensive line twice now. It's a really important position. It's a really important line, right? And if you have had a team with a bad offensive line, you understand just how important it is, right? You either address it in the offseason or you address it in the middle of the season. It's not a good place to be trying to address it in the middle of the season. The Texans offense looks absolutely incredible on paper, maybe the best wide receiver room in the nation, but there's still questions that remain along the offensive line that dealt with injuries last season. The group could be more solidified if Fisher, a second-round pick this year, shows promise in the offseason workouts and training camp, gives the coaching staff enough confidence to say, hey, this guy can start. If he can, that would allow Titus Howard to play inside and stabilize the front 5. If Fisher's not ready, we could see more midseason shuffling again. Despite constant changes along the line last season, though, CJ Stroud overcame those and he shined, even though he was not running very often. A lot of times you have, for some reason, people always talk about CJ Stroud. Oh, he's got the ability to run. He does have the ability to run. But you know what his over-under was on rushing yards for most games last season? 8.5 yards. So that tells you right there, that guy was not running. That guy was always looking to throw. I think similar of some other quarterbacks. They have the ability to run, but they would rather throw, right? Even Mahomes is like that, but he runs even more than CJ Stroud. So that's really impressive because it's one thing to have a bad offensive line and you just find a way to run, but CJ Stroud found a way to throw behind that offensive line shuffling last season. Okay, so imagine what he could do if he had improved protection. You look at that offensive line, you look at the numbers. CJ Stroud, absolutely phenomenal last season, historically great. Can you imagine if the Houston Texans have an improved pocket for him to sit in and confidently throw to Nico Collins, Tank Dell, or Stephon Diggs or Schultz? I mean, the Houston Texans, and they got Joe Mixon, and they drafted a running back, I believe. I mean, this is a really, really great, this is an all-star roster. Okay? Such an all-star roster. I worry if they're all gonna gel together, right? Are there too many cooks in the kitchen? Is this too much talent for one team? I think with CJ Stroud leading this thing that they're gonna be just fine. And I said it. I think the Texans are gonna win the Super Bowl. And Bill said, you don't have to tell me about O-line shuffling problems, Kyle. Yeah, Bill knows. Bill knows. And if the Houston Texans can figure out, a plan on that offensive line, like seriously, watch out. What we saw last year, that the sneak peek of CJ Stroud looked like somebody that was going to win MVP of the National Football League, not somebody that was going to win Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, which he won. It looked like he was going to win the whole thing. So Houston Texans, get better on the offensive line so your quarterback can win an MVP. The Indianapolis Colts, top priority, add a veteran corner to the mix. The Colts defensive front their defensive seven is pretty good when you look at it, potentially dynamic. The back end, however, has questions, and it's leaning on youth. Second-year pro Juju Brents and undrafted 3-year corner Dallas Flowers are in line to start on the outside, along slot maven Kenny Moore II. Tack on Nick Cross, potentially taking on a bigger role in safety. There could be some growing pains in the secondary. If they could add a veteran corner to help shepherd this group, it would make sense. My guy that I think that would make sense here is Stephon Gilmore. He was with the Colts 2 years ago. Then he was with Dallas. Right now, he's still a free agent. If they could bring Stephon Gilmore back, it could stabilize a young corner crew in a division that's going to be very difficult to win with very good quarterback play with Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud. So I think it makes sense, right? Gilmore's already been with the Colts. He's going to be cheap. You got a lot of young people around Stephon Gilmore. He's a veteran. He can show them how to walk, show them how to cover, show them how to study, show them what to look for. Kind of like the kind of value Amari Cooper is going to bring to Jerry Jeudy. This would make a ton of sense for the Colts. And talking about Trevor Lawrence, let's talk about the Jags. It's a similar tune. The top priority, help the cornerback room. And Ryan Nielsen brings a defense that should be an upgrade. But the question is whether the Jags have the corners to play the new defensive coordinator system. Ronald Darby was signed this offseason. He could be a starter. Ronald Darby is a veteran at this point. He's bounced around. He's with the Broncos for a while. Very interesting voice. Not what you would expect when you hear him talk. Third round pick Jerrion Jones might be the nickel starter. And fifth rounder DeAndre Prince is in line to play a key reserve role. I don't question the Jags' decision to draft Brian Thomas in round 1 instead of picking one of the corners sitting on the board, but doing so certainly left question marks on the defensive back end. At this point, Jacksonville appears to be counting on Nielsen to scheme around any of the roster concerns, but there's still time. But I'm not sure that the defensive passing game or passing yards allowed, I don't think this is going to be a strength for Jacksonville. So they really are hoping that they can just find a way to scheme around their inefficiencies or what was the word I'm looking for? Inefficiencies. No, that's not it. I'm mixing two words. Let me know what the word is that I'm looking for. All right. Inequities. No, that's not it. Inefficient. Now I forgot the word I said. let me know what you guys think. All right, moving on to the team that has won the Super Bowl the last 2 years and is looking to three-peat. And let's just hope it doesn't happen, right? We talked about the football gods earlier. They don't let anybody three-peat. They didn't let the Broncos do it in 2000. But that's only because John Elway retired. But Patrick Mahomes isn't retiring. Patrick Mahomes got a three-peat in his scope. He's locked in. And their top priority is to find out if rookie Kingsley Sumatia can start at left tackle. Left tackle is a very important position. You guys know, left tackle became really important because of a guy named Lawrence Taylor, right? You've seen the beginning of The Blind Side. You know how this story goes. Joe Theismann goes down and he gets his leg absolutely snapped in half. And then left tackle became really important. Remember, last offseason, the Chiefs signed Jawan Taylor to a big money deal with the plan to move him to left tackle. But that changed. Then they changed their minds 2 months later and inked Donovan Smith and flipped Jawan Taylor back to the right side. So it's possible Brett Veek and Andy Reid are similarly in a play-it-by-ear mode at left tackle this year. Sumatia and second-year tackle Juana Morris are set to compete for the left tackle duties. Do the Chiefs love youth protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side, trusting the MVP quarterback to make it work, or might they bring in a veteran, perhaps Smith, closer to training camp? It could depend on how Sumatia and Morris look in the upcoming months. Yeah, I mean, look, you see a common theme. A lot of these teams that are the most complete teams in the NFL, right? Ravens, the Chiefs, even the Texans, offensive line questions. The team that's going to have this more solid offensive line is probably going to be the team that pulls away from the teams that are struggling in this area. And it's a lot of the power teams that have questions on the line. All right. Staying in the AFC West, the Las Vegas Raiders. This one's pretty self-explanatory. The top priority is to settle on a quarterback. Antonio Pierce said Aidan O'Connell earned the right to get the first team snaps this offseason, but the question is whether the second-year pro can hang on to the gig, and we're going to talk about that later. Vegas paid Gardner Minshew the salary of a premium bridge quarterback, but was shut out of the first-round signal caller market in the draft. Heading into his first full campaign as head coach, Pierce has a massive decision. Ride the youngster he showed faith in last season through the quarterback's peaks and valleys, or hand the reins to Minshew, who showed he can run an offense and keep a team in the playoff hunt. The outcome likely depends on whether O'Connell makes significant strides this offseason, and if it's close, Minshew will probably win the job. And a lot of people love Minshew. People are really high on Minshew. I actually interviewed a guy today, and we were talking before we went live, and I was telling him, I was like, Reddit's so weird. Like I put in looking to interview some Bronco fans, and there's people that are like, I don't know, they like took a screenshot of the places I've posted, because I posted like in the Ravens and the Browns, like all these team subreddits. I was like looking to interview, fans of every team, and they like screenshotted it and posted it. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like they caught me, or something. I'm like, did you read the article? I'm looking to interview a fan from every team. What do you like? I'm not asking for like your Venmo. Like, what the hell, dude? And he was like, dude, they're just so weird. Like I posted another one today, and I was like, hey guys, besides the basic questions, what's, you, the fans, what kind of questions do you want to hear, answered? Maybe just getting other people's perspective, so that every interview is not exactly the same. And then there were people that commented, and they were like, you asked us for an interviewer, now you're asking us for the questions. Would you want us to wipe your ass for you? And I'm just like, why are people like this? It's like so toxic. I hate that about the internet. People don't talk like this in person. You get on the internet, and then all of a sudden people become totally different people. I'm just too sensitive for it. So I ignore it. I just say, you know what? Not letting that in. Forget about that guy. That guy's a troll. But Reddit users, man, they're just really difficult to deal with. Nick said Reddit users are cavemen to some extent. And there's something. I'll say that. But he was like, I was telling him about this, right? And he was like, dude, I know. He goes, this offseason, before we drafted Bo Nix and stuff, I was like, hey, Russell Wilson's on his way out. What do you guys think about Gardner Minshew? And he was like brutally attacked. Like Gardner Minshew would be the worst thing that ever happened. It's like, dude, that's a valid question. So I guess the problem is I don't need other people to validate, but when people are that far off, it's hard to not be like, are you an idiot? So talking about Gardner Minshew, like, I think there's a lot of teams that didn't have a quarterback that felt similar to the guy I interviewed today, where they wouldn't mind having Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Aidan O'Connell is a young player. He was a rookie last season. Antonio Pierce said he earned the right to get the first snaps this offseason, but with Gardner Minshew there, if he is on, the second team, and second team is running more efficient, like Gardner Minshew is a pro, and he's definitely somebody that can get you into the playoff hunt late in the year. And the question is, what are the Raiders trying to do exactly this year? They're the only team that doesn't have a quarterback, if you really think about it. You go through every team, and everybody either has a quarterback or they have somebody that they just drafted, right? The only other team, I guess you could say, is Tennessee, but Tennessee is not a good example because they drafted Will Levis in the second round, I believe, with the first pick in the second round. So, and Will Levis was even talked about going in the top 5, if you remember correctly. So, Aiden O'Connell, who was drafted in the 5th round, I believe, it's not the same thing. Like, of course, they're still going to go with Will Levis, who barely got on the field late last season. Of course, they're going to see what more is in him. But Aiden O'Connell, right? It almost feels like the Raiders are just like kind of stuck right here, right? Every other team has a quarterback that fan bases are excited about, whether it's Bo Nix, your Mahomes, your Hurts. I guess the Giants are another team that are kind of in this situation. We're going to talk about them later. But looking at the Raiders right now, it's like if you bring in Gardner Minshew and he's good enough to win you games to get you into the postseason picture, well, what does that do for you next year, right? Like if Aiden O'Connell is not the long-term answer, and that's pretty much what you're saying if you start Gardner Minshew. But Gardner Minshew's, going to play good enough for you to not have a top 5 pick. How do you ever fix this problem, right? And this is really, this could be a frustrating situation for somebody like Antonio Pierce, who earned this job, by understanding the Raider way, going back to their roots, getting this team to have fun again. But now you put him in a situation where it's like, I hope Al Davis and Antonio Pierce are having these conversations like, look, I'm not saying the word tank, but if you want this team to really turn around, like, how are we ever going to answer this question if we don't get a top 5 pick? Because that's just the way the NFL draft works, right? Eventually, they're going to have to do something. And if the Raiders do go, 4-11 or no, 4 what would that be? 13. If they do go 4-13, is Antonio Pierce's job safe? And if it's not, and they haven't had these conversations, then Gardner Minshew would be the guy, and he would be a premium bridge quarterback. But I'm not sure what he's bridging you to if he wins you 9 games. So very interesting kind of situation there for the Raiders. And Bill said correct. First pick in the second round was Will Levis. They kept cutting to him in the draft on broadcast day 1 of him not being taken. Kind of cruel, actually. Yeah, that is kind of messed up. And then Nick said the issue Gardner is Gardner's a wild card round exit QB. You can't get a ring with Gardner. Yeah. I mean, and it's like, what are we doing here? Bill said Minshew is going to help Aiden get better. Garoppolo was not a role model. Yeah, he was probably having too much fun in Vegas. And Nick said the Raiders should have drafted Radler late. You might get some buy-in with Radler. And Bill agrees. And Radler's Raiders had a nice ring to it. It does. But hey, if Radler actually ends up working out like you guys suggest, and I'm happy that they didn't draft him. So staying in the AFC West, we're going to talk about the Chargers. And this one makes sense. Their top priority is to figure out a wide receiver pecking order. I don't know what they're going to... I mean, this was part of Harbaugh coming in and just cleaning house, right? Okay, that's the old system. The only person that we're keeping for sure, Joey Bosa, our safety, best safety in the NFL, and Justin Herbert, right? This kind of old, I don't want to say old, but post 30, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, all these guys that want to get paid, we need to get them out and we need to replace them with youth because youth is cheap. And they did that. And they drafted guys like Ladd McConkey, who has a chance to get a massive target share as a rookie. If he can stay healthy, they have Josh Palmer, who's a solid number 2. The 2023 first round pick Quentin Johnson, who they drafted at the end of that first round, he's going to have to show significant improvement. And if you saw, I did a draft analyst on him, and I mentioned his weaknesses. Now, I didn't get them from myself. I played receiver in high school, so I'm not like an expert at it, but when I'm watching an expert talk about it, I can really connect the dots and see exactly what they're saying because I remember the coaching points, right? High pointing the football, being aggressive. Quentin Johnston had a real issue playing way too passively for a guy as big as he is. This is a big guy that tends to want to catch a football like this instead of like this. And that was very clear on film. And now here we are going into year 2, and it's like he's going to have to show significant improvement to live up to the hype. And I thought he was drafted too high. But what people might be forgetting about Quentin Johnston is that he was not a guy that was going to come in like Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. He was a person that was drafted for his upside, right? We need to see if he can live up to that hype, but this is kind of the time of the year or going into year 2 where it's like, okay, this is what we drafted. We drafted somebody with an amazing upside. Can he reach that potential? DJ Chark is serviceable. He's on the downslope of his career. Now, is there a number one option? If I had to put money on it, I would say it's Ladd McConkey, who is probably going to emerge as the likeliest choice out of this group. But the rookie slot going to pace is there going to be a rookie that is going to pace Greg Roman's offense? And one more thing to keep in mind, I believe the Chargers, I was just thinking about this when I was looking at this because I'm looking at these receivers, and I think there's one that they're keeping off the list. They are Brendan Rice. Brendan Rice was drafted in the 7th round. Of course, Jerry Rice's son, not even listed here. Don't be surprised if Brendan Rice gets some playing time and just has a knack for this and maybe takes some of the snaps for DJ Chark, or maybe fights for that wide receiver 3 position. But this is a totally different group of people, a lot of youth, right? We're talking about 3 rookies or 2 rookies and 1 first-year player and then 1 veteran. Can DJ Chark kind of be that serviceable veteran and help these young guys around? I'm not sure. If I were the Chargers, instead of letting the Dolphins take Odell Beckham, maybe that would have been a good spot for him to go at this point in his career. And Nick said the Chargers' top priority was losing wide receiver talent this offseason. I hope Ladd does well. No relationship to my Phil McConkey, but that last name looks good on the back of a jersey. I feel the same way when I see certain names in the back of a jersey. There was a person I went to school with one time, and her last name was Elam. And I used to always be like, "You're awesome, you're awesome." And it was just because Jason Elam was our kicker. I think this was like in elementary school. And I remember her going, "No, I'm not related, but everybody asks that." And I'm like, dude, how good of a kicker do you need to be for you to share a last name with the kicker? And people often ask you if you're related. Dude, Jason Elam was the GOAT. All right. We just talked about the Miami Dolphins bringing in Odell Beckham Jr. Top priority. Okay, this is going to be maybe a contradicting one. I'm not sure where I stand with this one. The top priority is to pay Tua. Okay, the Dolphins have said all the right things about wanting to lock down Tua long-term as the quarterback enters his final year of his rookie contract. Jared Goff's recent 4-year, $212 million extension with the Lions likely sets the parameters around where Tua should land on a new deal. Some outside the building might scoff at paying that much to a quarterback with an injury history who also lacks postseason success, but it is the going rate at the most important position in sports. The usual timeline for new quarterback deals is that they are done leading up to training camp. Keep in mind, there's other quarterbacks in this situation right now, like Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, right? These are still quarterbacks that have showed up to camp. They're going to play. They're not worried about their contract. They're letting their agents handle it. And hopefully, during that usual timeline for these guys leading up to training camp, these deals will get done. If Tua, who missed some offseason activities, according to Mike McDaniel, isn't given an extension by July, that will speak louder than all the flowery words that Chris Greer, their general manager, uses to praise the quarterback. The Finns could take it year by year, electing to pay out the fifth-year option in 2024 and tag Tua for the next 2 seasons. But that strategy would come with risks in the interest of saving a few bucks and cast a pall over a team that expects to compete in the AFC East. I'm just going to say I would not pay Tua right now. I wouldn't pay Tua right now. I know that it's not a good place to be, right? When you don't have a quarterback and you don't want to lose a quarterback if you don't have a replacement. But the fact is like these quarterbacks that reset the market, like Tua is not Jared Goff. And this might sound really contradicting to some people, especially people that didn't think Goff was worth the money. Goff was worth the money. If you don't think Goff is worth the money, you have some kind of weird bias against pocket quarterbacks. There's absolutely nothing about Jared Goff that raises any red flags about the contract that he got. He looked great in the postseason. He's been to a Super Bowl. Yeah, he didn't win the Super Bowl, but he got there. Last season with the Lions, he looked amazing. Yeah, they fell apart in the third quarter against the 49ers. They did. But if you watch the game against Philly, you watched the game, or not Philly, it was against Tampa, right? And then the week before against the Rams, those were really good games. Like, Matthew Stafford is not a bum. Jared Goff outplayed Matthew Stafford, right? I think Puka Nacua had like 160 receiving yards in that game, and Jared Goff still had the better game. Like, Jared Goff is an elite quarterback in this league. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Jalen Hurts. You know, he doesn't have the ability to run with the football, but he doesn't need to. They have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. He doesn't need to run the football. They have a decent young roster, right? I would say better than decent. I would say great, one of the most complete teams in the league. And Jared Goff, being the quarterback of that team, gives them a chance every year that he has on this contract to win a Super Bowl. Not a playoff game, a Super Bowl. Tua hasn't won a playoff game yet. So I just don't know how I would feel about that situation. Now, I would do the tag. You know, I would take the Kirk Cousins approach, just like at the time the Redskins did. They did that, and, you know, everybody's happy. Your team's not in a long-term situation. You still got your quarterback being paid top 5 quarterback money. It's a win-win for both parties, especially when you have the injury concerns and a guy that hasn't won a playoff game yet and looked like a ghost in the game against the Chiefs. I know that was a good defense, but, you know, this Dolphins offense was supposed to be the real deal. And they were also injury riddled on defense. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, or Jalen Phillips. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but they had some injuries. I get that. But Tua did not do anything in that game to make Miami feel like, oh, this is the guy that we want long-term. Great regular season quarterback so far, right? But have we seen enough from Tua to say that he deserves over $200 million? I just don't think so, in my opinion. And Bill said, Henry Hanaski is still the best football name ever, and I'll die on that hill. Love is going to get paid. Boy, howdy. Yeah, he is. He is going to get paid, and he should. The tag will piss Tua off, but after giving Daniel Jones a $140 million deal, I think your approach makes sense so long as they don't need the tag for anyone else. And I'll say this too. This might be bold as well, because they already used one of their tags on Jalen Waddle, I believe. Even if there were other players that need to be tagged, my opinion is that none of them are more important than Tua, simply because quarterback's the most important position. There's nothing on this team that takes priority over the quarterback position. It would almost be better, financially, to just give Jalen Waddle a 4-year deal, not tag him, give him $100 million, and save that 200 and whatever $1 million contract for the quarterback, right? So it's kind of about positional value as well. That's just where my head's at. Okay. The Dolphins, if they do take it year by year, I would say that this postseason, in the regular season, not guaranteeing that they make it to the postseason, but Mike McDaniel looks to be a hell of a good coach, a great offensive mind. And if there is any doubt that Mike McDaniels is actually being held back by Tua, you're going to be really happy that you didn't pay him all that money. I mean, what if the Dolphins make it to the postseason and they're a first round exit again, right? You just keep doing, the same thing over and over. It's like, it makes you wonder. It's like, are the Dolphins just coached really well? Or is Tua doing really good in the regular season and choking in the playoffs? All right. Either way, these were some of the conversations that people said about Dak Prescott when Dak Prescott was looking to get paid. And look, sometimes people do just settle. They're like, you know what? Dak Prescott might not win us a Super Bowl, but our fans will believe every year that we could. And that's good for ticket sales. It's good for jerseys. It's good for national exposure. And I'm sure sometimes those things happen because it's a little less risky than tagging a player that you could end up losing and then being like the Raiders without a quarterback. But you don't want to be like the Giants either, without a quarterback and a contract. I think the Broncos are in that position too. Nick said, off topic, but why does Daniel Jones look like an AI-generated quarterback? That is so funny. Oh my God. Oh my God, he does. Oh, that is so funny. And Bill said, I agree on the tag situation. If I had to do it over again, I would. And yeah, it's tough, man, trying to make these $100 million decisions. And Bill said, Nick, Giants like bland players. Anyone that shows emotion, they move on from, like Shoki and OBJ. What about Jeremy Shockley? Like, he had a lot of personality. Didn't they keep him for a while? Eli Manning, probably the biggest personality I've ever met. I mean, that guy just walks into a room and lights it up. I mean, I'm just kidding. You're totally right. It's funny, though. I never put it together. Moving to the AFC East, we got the New England Patriots. Top priority, grow Drake May. Oh, so you were saying, you were talking about Jeremy Shockley. Oh, I always said Shockey. Oh, I thought it was Shockley. Look, I always thought it was spelled like this. Shockley. I thought Jeremy Shockley's name was that. I'm probably wrong. I'm not a Giants fan. Don't attack me. We don't do names here. You guys know that. No L. Okay, there's no L. I know there is an L because I'm a loser for not knowing that. All right, the New England Patriots, their top priority, 100% agree. Grow Drake May and the young wide receiver corps together. The reported chatter coming out of New England is that the number 3 overall pick could back up Jacoby Brissett this season. which is crazy. I'm not in favor of that, by the way. I don't think you could draft a quarterback that high and then sit him behind Jacoby Brissett. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I understand the logic. A sturdy veteran mentor can bring a lot of value to a young quarterback that's kind of being thrown into an organization that has a lot of turnover, right? New head coach, I don't know, is there a new GM? I think there's a new GM, new head coach, new quarterback. It's a lot of change. But what I want to see is the Patriots grooming Drake May to take over within the first month by ensuring he gets plenty of reps with his wide receivers. Jalen Polk was drafted out of Washington. Javon Baker, one of my favorite receivers in this year's draft. This guy is an absolute freak athlete. Check out some of just look up Javon Baker if you don't know who he is. Demario Douglas and Kendrick Bourne, who's coming off an injury. Those profile as the receiving core group this year. If Gerard Mayo's first season as the head ball coach in New England is about setting up stepping stones to get back to the top of the AFC East, it's paramount that the franchise quarterback develops a rapport with his top targets, regardless of when he sees the field first. And I definitely think Drake May's got to be somebody that is out there week one. He's just too good, man. And I don't know, like, was he that much of a project? It's kind of weird. It's like he's such a project, but he was, all last season, he was the number 2. Caleb Williams, Drake May, right? And then Jaden Daniels had an incredible season and ended up taking that spot. And then Drake May slips to number 3. But it's just weird for everybody to be just on a quarterback as heavy as everybody's been on Drake May just to say that he's not ready to start. It's a little contradicting, in my opinion. I understand the thinking, but honestly, if you're worried that his confidence is going to be shaken because he's going into a new situation, why was he drafted at number 3 overall, right? If you're worried, if he's that fragile of a person, right? I look at it like, look, everything's new for the Patriots. So if things aren't going well, there's a lot of places to point your finger, right? This isn't a situation like when Russ came to Denver and it was like, oh, we're just a quarterback away. And then all of a sudden Denver wasn't winning games and everyone's pointing at Russ because it's like this roster is too talented. There is no continuity with anything on this Patriots team. So if Drake May gets thrown out there and the Patriots don't lose week 1, everybody's not going to be pointing at Drake May saying, oh, this guy's a loser, right? There's going to be plenty of places to point. And at the end of the day, I think Patriot fans all understand that this is not a playoff year. This is just a year to get this team together, right? Whatever that means. But I don't know how you're going to do that if Drake May's on the sideline because you're scared of throwing him into the fire, right? Throw Drake May out there. He was drafted number 3 overall. He's a project. Get ready on the way. And that's what I say about the Drake May situation. And Nick said, no L. 07 Pats before making contact with Eli Manning. Oh, Bill loves that. Oh, Bill loves that. Staying in this division, we're going to talk about the New York Jets. And the top priority is to make it to week 1 healthy. Aaron Rodgers is on pace to be ready for the regular season. He is clearly not hindered if he's doing all the work in voluntary OTAs. The key is keeping him upright without him, being injured by ankle injury or a herniated L5-S1 disc in mid-July. Rodgers isn't the only injury concern. They did bring Mike Williams, who we previously mentioned, from the Chargers. Mike Williams has not been healthy for an entire season since I can remember. And it's funny when people were talking about the Jets, and this coming from someone that's really high in the Jets. But when people talk about the Jets, they go, what are the expectations for the Jets? And they go, well, are we assuming everybody's healthy? And they're like, well, yeah, I guess, because everyone's healthy right now. But why are we assuming that certain players that have never stayed healthy for an entire season are going to stay healthy? I just don't think that that's like a fair thing to assume. Mike Williams has dealt with a ton of injuries. I don't know if he's going to be able to play the crucial role opposite of Garrett Wilson that they want him to do if he's dealing with injuries throughout the season. And he hasn't been cleared for football activities coming off a torn ACL. Presuming that he's ready for week 1, as he expects, what kind of shape is he going to be in? Will Rodgers trust the guy that can stretch the field for them? And then there's offensive tackle Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, both aging and with an injury history. The Jets need them to at least start the season healthy, even if rookie Alu Fashunu, who was drafted, I think, 5 overall? 6, something crazy high, right? No, I think it was like 10. I don't know why I jumped all the way up to 5. But still, like the second offensive lineman taken in the draft after Joe All. So they do have somebody there that's ready to sub in when issues potentially come up. But all of this in one package is just Jets, make it to week 1 healthy. Mike Williams, be ready to go week 1, be in football shape. Rodgers, clear for football activities. Keep him healthy with the offensive line coming off injuries as well. Just everybody get to week 1 healthy and ready to go. Because if this team can stay healthy, and that might be a big can, normally I would say a big if, but I said can. That's a big can. But if they can, the Jets could go to the Super Bowl this year and win it. I think at least an AFC championship. This is a very, very talented roster, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be on his FU tour, and Rodgers does this all the time. I think there was 2 times in his career where he wasn't voted to the Pro Bowl. In the following 2 seasons, he won MVP. So Rodgers really does have a way of using this kind of stuff to motivate him and get him ready to go. And 1 second, I just got the Jets, though, sky's the limit. Okay, looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is going to be a good one. And I knew Bill was going to love that one. I knew he would. And Fashanu was first round 11. Okay, so I thought 10. But yeah, 11 because they picked right before the Broncos. And Nick said, speaking of the Jets, they have a player born in 2004, if you all wanted to feel old. Oh, my God. 2004? Holy crap. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that one, Nick. All right. 2004? What is he, 15? 20 years old. Wow. Can't even drink yet. Wow. That's crazy. All right. The Pittsburgh Steelers. The 2004. That is so crazy. Oh, my God. I remember that entire season. We had Jake Plummer. And we went 13-3. And we beat the Patriots in the divisional round. We lost to the Steelers at home. And the Steelers went on to beat the Seahawks. This is a big moment for me that there's a player that was born in a year. He was 0 years old in something that I'm old enough to remember the full season. That is just mind-blowing to me right now. Jeez. And Bill said, I was already married for 2 years by 2004. And being married ages you 10 years per year if you pick the wrong person. Trust me, I know. All right, the Pittsburgh Steelers add to the wide receiver room. The Deontay Johnson trade in March kind of put George Pickens into a clear number 1 role, and the Steelers have not added veterans to make up for the loss on an already thin wide receiver core. 3rd round pick Roman Wilson is in line for the number 2 job out of the slot. Wilson has the talent to contribute immediately, but immediately picking up the production Johnson left behind is a lot to ask for the rookie. Van Jefferson has been a disappointment with the Rams and Falcons, and shouldn't be counted on for a big role. Calvin Austin III and Quez Watkins are more gadget players than every down weapons. Steeler fans have been pinning for the club to make a big splash at the position. To date, they've been disappointed. The most significant move is drafting Wilson. Whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields under center, the Steelers need more help at wide receiver. And yeah, that is true. And it's funny. I didn't think about this. You look at the way the Steelers drafted. I'm going to pull up their draft really quick. It was all physical, tough, nasty. It was like the Steelers are gearing up for an old school 2004 type season. That's what it kind of felt like. It was all just nasty players that are really tough. And I thought they had arguably the best draft, but it is funny that it's not mentioned very much that they didn't address an actual issue on the team. And the city of Pittsburgh, the Steelers were awarded the 2026 NFL draft, by the way. Next year, it's going to be in Lambeau. The year after, the draft will be happening in Pittsburgh. So that's kind of cool. Total sidebar, not important to this at all. Because I put Steelers draft. That's all that's coming up right now. Look, they drafted a lot of players. They also got another Wilson out of NC State, the linebacker. I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be really good. But at wide receiver, who's going to be the guy that steps up to the plate? Now, are the Steelers just looking to run the football? Right? They didn't pick up Najee Harris's fifth-year option. They have Jalen Warren or Jalen Warren. He's RB2. Is Russell Wilson going to compensate for not having really good weapons? I don't know, but there is a glaring hole on a team that even if their identity is going to be, hey, we're not going to finesse on the outside, we're going to be physical and nasty, you still want to have a true number two. And you're like, okay, Roman Wilson was drafted for that, but he was a rookie. He will be a rookie. And I just don't know how much you can expect from him right off the bat, especially if Russell Wilson's the quarterback. He's not very wide receiver friendly, but at the same time, Russell Wilson doesn't throw over the middle, so you really don't need any slot wide receivers because Russ won't throw it to them even if they are open. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit too. And last but not least, we have the Tennessee Titans. And Bill says, I got lucky on that. July will be 22 years married. Wow. That is awesome, Bill. See, you strike me as a person that is very logical, very smart. You make calculated decisions, right? I'm very impulsive, immature. I make bad decisions, right? Not anymore. I kind of grew out of that. But getting married impulsively, do not recommend, because eventually it's going to come back and bite you in the ass. So, Bill, I'm really, really proud, not proud. I just want to say congratulations, because that's a really hard thing to do. Staying married to somebody is challenging because, you guys grow as well, right? Like if you get married at 20, who you are at 20 and who you are at 42 years old, totally different world. So it takes a lot of work to make a marriage work for that long. All right, the last team is going to be the Tennessee Titans and Will Levis. This is the big question, okay? The top priority is going to be to just immerse Will Levis in Brian Callahan's system. And what's really weird is that there's a head coach out there that got fired from Tennessee Titans that did not get picked up anywhere. I just find that really interesting, right? A coach of the year candidate. Everybody always thought he was a really good coach. We're talking about Mike Vrabel. And he just kind of disappeared. And it's just kind of weird. Like, is he on a blacklist or something? No one questions Will Levis's big arm or willingness to stand and take a hit. But will he be able to make the mundane throws that keep an offense on schedule? Now, this is what I was talking about in the very beginning when I was like, Brian Callahan was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals. Now he's the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. So they are moving in an offensive direction after Mike Vrabel was a defensive guy. Last year, Levis averaged 10.5 air yards per attempt, the highest mark for any quarterback since 2020, minimum of 200 attempts per next-gen stats. In a quick pass league, can Levis keep the chains moving when the big shots aren't there? In Callahan's 5 years as offensive coordinator in Cincinnati, the highest single-season air yard per attempt figure registered by any Bengals quarterback was Joe Burrow, and he hit the mark of 8.8 air yards per attempt in his rookie season. From that point forward, the number dwindled, much like it has for many teams across the league in the past 2 seasons. And that is something we can talk about on another day. But that is an interesting trend that the NFL is kind of going in, where that Vic Fangio defense, you're getting more and more teams adopting it. It's making it harder for quarterbacks to throw more than 8 yards per attempt. And that's going across the NFL. That number is just going down for everybody. In the past 2 seasons, Burrow's AYA figures, and that's average air yards per attempt, it was 7.2 and 6.5, going down from 8.8. Respectfully, Jake Browning's average air yards per attempt after taking over for Joe Burrow in 2023 was 6.3. So it went from 6.5 to 6.3. Yes, Burrow could have his whatever, Jamar Chase is down there somewhere moments. But at its core, Cincinnati's attack was station-to-station offense under Callahan. Will Levis will need to master that ability this offseason as he prepares to play for a new head coach. The Titans have brought in the veteran wide receivers to help him accomplish that goal. If he struggles, though, through the first months of the season, perhaps we could see blank, I won't say his name because I'm going to ruin my whole next segment, who can lead that type of timing on offense. And this is the name of today's video. And this is a great time to transition. I am going to go over which quarterbacks have a very, very loose grip on the quarterback position. There's always your teams that have your, surefire guys, your tier 1 quarterbacks, but then you have these other group of quarterbacks that are not really secure in their position. So we're going to go over a couple of them. We mentioned earlier one of them when we talked about the Raiders, right? Is it going to be Gardner Minshew? Is it going to be Kevin O'Connell? Kevin O'Connell has earned the right to pick up the starting offense, but if things aren't going well, and if he's not catching up to speed, I definitely think that they would make a pivot and bring in Gardner Minshew. Looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you got Russell Wilson, who's already hit his ceiling, right? Russ has hit his ceiling. He's 35 years old. He's on the downward slide right now. You'd also have a quarterback on your roster, though, that we don't know his ceiling, and that's Justin Fields. If things aren't going well with Pittsburgh and they're not winning a bunch of football games, let's say it's week 4 and they're week 5 and they're 1-4, the crowd's going to be chanting for Justin Fields to get into the game. There's a reason that the Broncos are paying all that money of the contract, and then the Steelers got him on a veteran minimum, right? They have no ties to Russell Wilson, right? This is the plan. Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback. There is not a competition right now. But just like Kenny Pickett got thrown in as a rookie, he wasn't starting week 1, but I think week 4 they were 1-3, and Kenny Pickett took over. Let's just see what he's got. Justin Fields still has an upside that makes him a mystery, right? So Russell Wilson, it's funny. It's like he's for sure the starter day 1. Can't say the same for week 4. This could switch very, very fast. And Bill said, and they will chant. Remember the Fire Canada thing from last year, those guys aren't shy about it. Yeah. And I hate to say this, but from someone that's seen Russ, the last 2 seasons, like it seems like it's a matter of if or when, not if. So, I mean, and plus they knew what they were doing when they brought in Justin Fields. You don't bring in a quarterback like Justin Fields in just, oh yeah, he's just here to back up Russell Wilson. No, he's not. He's here to compete for the starting job. You're going to give it to Russ because he's earned that as a veteran in this league and a Super Bowl champion. But as soon as things get a little uncomfortable in Pittsburgh, Justin Fields is going to take over and be the starting quarterback in Pittsburgh. So I say Russell Wilson has a loose grip on the quarterback position. Another interesting one that I will put out there, and you guys tell me what you think, is Kirk Cousins. All right. Some people are saying Penix because Penix was 24 years old, I believe, drafted at 24 years old as well. He was older, kind of like the same way that they were viewing Bo Nix. And I don't look at old as a bad thing. I don't even know how this narrative got started. I was talking about this on an interview today. Or actually the guy I was interviewing was talking about this, and I fully agree. I don't know why that became something that's bad. Oh, because, he's only going to get 3 contracts instead of 4. It's like, talk about down the road problems. We just want to know if this guy's good enough to get 1 contract, right? So no one cares about those future problems. But if Kirk Cousins goes out and he's not gelling with the team, he's coming back from an injury. If things aren't going very well, I don't know if it's going to be long before the crowd wants to see what Penix has, right? This is somebody that they drafted very high that surprised a lot of people, right? Penix is going to see the field if Kirk gives even a small window of an opportunity for them to throw him out there. And if Kirk gets hurt, let's say it's an ankle and he's out for a week or 2, and Penix comes in during those weeks and he balls out, let's say he just looks really good, kind of like when we got our first look at Deshaun Watson. I think Deshaun Watson got his first start, not week 1. I think it was a Thursday night football game, and he got thrown into the game and had a 49-yard rush, and it was just it produced this spark, and that was kind of the beginning of the Deshaun Watson era. And I could see something like that happening with Penix, right? But you've already paid Kirk Cousins all that money. But at the end of the day, it's all about what you're getting on the field, right? Penix and Kirk Cousins are under contract right now. Whoever's starting on the field at this point doesn't matter. The books, the checks and balances, they are what they are. All right. As a head coach, you got to put the best quarterback on the field that gives you a chance to win. And I think it's probably going to be Kirk Cousins for most of the year. But God forbid there is an injury or a chance for Penix to go into the game and he steals the show, he might not give that job back. And Bill said Cousins is safe this year, but 2 years from now, ? He pops another Achilles and he's a goner, though. We had the same thought. And Nick said, I mean, if Penix balls, how do you say no? And you don't, and a lot of people don't remember this too. When Russell Wilson was drafted to the Seahawks were not looking to start Russell Wilson, right? That was a total coincidence. Same thing happened with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott and Russell Wilson played very well in the preseason, so well that we were like, holy crap, this guy's got to start. And Seattle's like, no kidding, this guy's got to start. We just paid, I think, Matt Moore. I think the quarterback was Matt Moore. We just paid him $84 million, which I just threw that number out there. Hold on, let me see. Matt Moore contract Seahawks. Matt Moore contract details. Was his name Matt? Yeah, quarterback Matt Moore. Cowboys. No, not Matt Moore. He didn't even play for the Seahawks. Who did Russell Wilson take the starting job from in Seattle? Matt Flynn. Okay. This was a full-scale admission that the Matt Flynn contract was 3 years, $26 million. And then the Seahawks put in Russell Wilson in the preseason, and then he took the starting job. He beat out Flynn for the job in the preseason. And I remember this. I remember this whole thing unfolding in front of my eyes. I remember watching it on TV and being like, this guy's got to be the starter, right? So they spent $20 million with $10 million guaranteed on the Packers backup. And you might be saying, well, that's not a ton of money, but the contracts weren't what they are today back then. Hat on Fires in the chat. He said, but will Penix be balling? We don't know. I mean, that's the fun part of it. I mean, he was drafted really high. Somebody saw something in him. So you just never know with these guys, man. Matt Moore sounds like a backup NPC name in a video game. It does. Rangers came back. He was a backup quarterback, Matt Moore. He's a real person. He wasn't the backup for the Seahawks. And Bill said Rangers came back and won it. Oh my God. Congratulations, Bill. Let's set those fireworks off for you. I haven't gotten fireworks in a while. I've been getting a thumbs up. I don't know why. All right, it doesn't do that anymore. I just look like an idiot. But yeah, that's a great example to go back to this because it just tells you that, hey, the money's one thing, but if a guy goes out there and he's balling, how do you say no? And Bill said it's all good. Just put your thumbs down. Stop it. Will Levis. Will Levis's job is not safe. Okay, Will Levis is the guy that they're going to go with. They're going to immerse him in Brian Callahan's system. Levis is going to need to show that he can play at this position at a high level. Like we saw him throw 4 touchdown passes, his starting debut, I believe against the Dolphins on Sunday Night Football. Maybe it was Monday Night Football. It could have been Thursday. It was primetime. And we said, holy crap, Will Levis. This guy's good, right? Miami was rolling at the time. And then we saw him throw 4 touchdown passes for all of his games combined in the remainder of the season. So it's kind of a tale of two halves, but with games. So is he going to be that guy for Tennessee? And the problem is that Tennessee is probably also in a transition year. New head coach, a lot of new players. Derrick Henry's gone. It's almost fair to assume that Tennessee is going to have some growing pains and probably lose more than they win this year. And if that's the case, is Will Levis going to be the first person to take the fall? Mason Rudolph was brought over, and no, Mason Rudolph, he's not a big name like Justin Fields, but he was somebody that, took over for the Steelers, didn't throw a single interception, threw 4 touchdown passes, was serviceable, and got the Steelers into the playoffs. Like, if they feel like, hey, maybe we can go with this other guy, they're going to do it, right? Will Levis is only safe because this is just who they inherited. They have no ties to Will Levis. They made a move for Mason Rudolph. That is a little bit different. So, but I just think Will Levis, I think there's a chance that, like, if Will Levis is in there, I think my personal, like, if I was running Tennessee and Will Levis was out there and it was week 3 and we were 0-3, I would say, here's what we're going to do. Will Levis is going to play this entire season. I don't care how bad it gets, right? A, we'll have a good draft pick next year. B, we'll actually find out if Will Levis gets better. Imagine there's a quarterback that had a late growth spurt. Let's use Ryan Tannehill for an example, since we're talking about Tennessee. Imagine if it was the 30th game that Ryan Tannehill played that kind of flipped a switch for him, and you benched your quarterback at the 29th game, just one game before he had that aha moment. We're not going to make that mistake in Tennessee. Will Levis is going to play an entire season, and at the very end of the season, we'll go back and evaluate how he played. Did he get better week to week? And is there legitimate reason to believe that he could be our guy moving forward? It's hard to do that when week 4 you bring in Mason Rudolph, and then week 7 you go back to Will Levis, and then week 10 back to Rudolph. Like, we see this all the time. It comes off as a little bit desperate. I think you have to be honest about the state of your franchise, where you're at right now. The biggest question mark with Tennessee is whether or not they have a franchise quarterback. And I think the only way to really get that question answered is to let Will Levis play an entire season. And with all that said, we see franchises not take this advice all the time. And if Will Levis is out there looking like absolute hot garbage, perhaps we'll see Mason Rudolph, who can lead the type of timing on offense that Brian Callahan's going to be wanting, right? It's not great, but the question is like, okay, well, you're going to win it's the same thing with the Raiders. Like, okay, you're going to bring in this guy that gives you a better chance to win just to be in the same position next year. What, is Mason Rudolph going to take you to the Super Bowl? Hell no, right? You probably won't take you to the playoffs. This isn't Mike Tomlin, with all due respect to Brian Callahan. I don't know how he's going to do. I'm here in Tennessee. The people around here have received the news really well, but I'm just not sure if that's going to be the case, right? We talked about Drake May and Jacoby Brissett. It's hard to say because we don't really know who the starter is. If it's Jacoby Brissett, I would say that this definitely applies, right? If Jacoby Brissett is going to open up the season, I think that his job is very, very loosely the starting position. Like, I think he could very easily lose that to Drake May because Drake May was drafted so high. All right. And then the other one, of course, was the Raiders, right? With Aiden O'Connell and, the backup Gardner Minshew. I think it's possible that that whatever decision they go with is going to be flipped at some point in the middle of the season. And then Sean Payton was just talking about this on the Broncos competition, the quarterback competition, Bo Nix, Jared Stidham, and Zach Wilson. He said they're all orphan dogs. This is how Sean Payton talks about his quarterbacks. They're all orphan dogs. I mean, what do you even say to that besides he's right? They are all orphan dogs. I mean, you really look at all these quarterbacks and they have a similar story. Bill said, it's like us bringing in Kurt Warner so Eli could sit behind him for a few games. Yeah, very, very similar. I actually forgot about that. Holy crap. So this is the kind of stuff Sean Payton says, right? You can't make it up. It's a 3-arm race for the starting spot in Denver. There's a pair of first-round picks, including a rookie. There are combined 37 starts in a combined 7 seasons for the 2 veterans. So not great, but a lot of experience. The wins are much less than the starts. There's a second chance and a first impression. And from what I heard from Sean Payton, he said that, Bo Nix looked great. Zach Wilson looks experienced. And I believe Jared Stidham was running the first team offense. And the reporters, Mike Kliss, who works for Denver, the news channel there, he said if you had to crown somebody a winner of these OTAs for the first week, it was Jared Stidham. But Jared Stidham is the one quarterback that's been in the system for going into his second year. So talking about the orphan group thing, Sean said it's kind of an orphan group. They're all orphan dogs. They come from somewhere, but they're doing good. It's a good room. It's a room full of questions going into 2024. The Broncos keeping on their never-ending search for a franchise quarterback. post-retirement of Peyton Manning, which also stands as the franchise's last playoff trip, have concluded with a Super Bowl triumph, though. Orphan dogs is hardly a common phrase, and it would seem somewhat fitting as none of Peyton's 3 quarterback one contenders would be front runners for starting jobs on most other ball clubs in 2024. Nonetheless, it's who the Broncos have been able to assemble, and a competition is underway. Sean Payton said they come from different systems. Payton said of his QBs, each having varying levels of experience and how their progress will differ. One is coming from college, one is coming from 2 or 3 NFL systems, and the other is coming from one system. They're all in a race to learn the system, I would say. You guys watch the practice. They're all doing well. Stidham's the oldest. He's still just 27 years old. He was a 2019 4th-round choice from the New England Patriots out of Auburn. Stidham was in Boston for a couple of years before he was traded to the Raiders. And also, remember, Jared Stidham was the starter when Bo Nix was at Auburn. Crazy, right? He started the first 2 games of his NFL career in 2022 when Derek Carr was benched. Despite moving on to Denver last season, Stidham eerily found himself in a close to identical situation when he replaced Russell Wilson, starting again the final 2 games of his team's season. Now there's another Wilson in the Broncos mix, Zach, and he's the 2021 number 2 overall pick, and he was traded this offseason after falling short of great expectations in Gotham with the New York Jets. Blessed with a cannon for an arm and an underrated mobility, Wilson is on his 2nd team after his struggles played out in the New York headlines for 3 seasons. And then there's Bo Nix, the number 12 overall pick, right? He lit it up at Oregon after transferring there from Auburn. Peyton said that he doesn't have any particular stance on sitting or playing rookie quarterbacks because he believes it all depends on the situation. There's no incumbent starter nor a true veteran. And I made a short about this on my YouTube channel of Sean Payton saying this. But he said, I think some of it is a byproduct of what you have in the building, talking about his stance on sitting or playing a rookie quarterback. If you have a starter in the building, then that's the path you go. Then sometimes you don't have that luxury, and then that's the path you go. A lot of it is dependent on the quarterback, his mental makeup. So I think it just varies. When you look at the Packers quarterback, Jordan Love, he was behind Aaron Rodgers, and then Rodgers was behind Brett Favre. There's a bit of a luxury there, but it's really dependent on the roster. And really, I watched that thing, and I was like, what is he really saying? He's not saying anything, right? He's just saying, like, whether you are going to start a rookie quarterback or not depends on who you have on the roster. Well, no shit, right? Of course, Jordan Love wasn't drafted, and he was going to take over for Aaron Rodgers immediately. But I think what he's trying to say is we don't have that situation here, right? Right now, it's anyone's job to take. And it's too early to tell who's the leader in the Broncos' 3 stray competition. But I got to believe that it's probably going to be Bo Nix because Sean just fell in love with this guy during the draft process. But if Bo Nix goes out there and he's not playing well, like you can always put Bo Nix in late, but you can't bench him early, if that makes sense, right? If you put Bo Nix in week 1 and you bench him week 4, what message are you sending to the fan base, to Bo Nix, more importantly? You might, pump his tires and say, oh, no, it's not you. We just, I don't want to throw you out there. Like, it's too late. You already did it. Okay. If you go with Jared Stidham, who was in the system last year, and Stidham's not working out, and then you put in Bo Nix and he's playing savior, that's a different energy. That's a different situation. And as the head coach, it's your job to figure out which situation is in the best interest of all 3 of these quarterbacks. And it's a really tough decision. Like, it's easy for fans to just say, oh, Bo Nix, right? No brainer. Of course, Bo Nix, you drafted him 12 overall. Not that easy, especially when you got 3 difficult defensive teams in the first 4 weeks of your season. I mean, Bo Nix is going to, if he does start week 1, he's going to be thrown into the fire. And we're going to find out really quick just how much of an experiment Bo Nix is going to be. And Nick said he's saying the Broncos will start a QB in the 2024 season. He did say that there will be a Broncos quarterback starting in 2024. The Falcons offensive coordinator shared history with Cousins. This is something that I wasn't aware of. Offensive coordinator Zach Robinson has that shared history with Kirk Cousins, and it's considered a comfort for his first season. Zach Robinson's entering his first season as the Falcons offensive coordinator. He's taken on various roles in the NFL, including serving as an assistant wide receivers coach, assistant quarterbacks coach, and quarterbacks passing game coordinator with the Rams. Anybody that comes from the Sean McVay coaching staff is almost a lock to be a good coach. Even though this will be Robinson's first time in this role, the 37-year-old coordinator feels comfortable working with the veteran Kirk Cousins as they both enter their first season in Atlanta. And this is what Robinson said via the team's website. This is my first time doing this. So having the comfort of a veteran quarterback like Kirk that's coming from this type of a system, I couldn't ask for anything better. Having an experienced quarterback in Cousins is a benefit for Robinson and a player he could lean on during the season. Before signing with the Falcons, Cousins played 6 seasons with the Vikings and 6 in Washington. In Minnesota, Cousins played under head coach Kevin O'Connell, who comes from the Sean McVay coaching tree like Robinson. We just talked about that. From 2014 to 2016, McVay was Cousins' offensive coordinator, and he earned his first Pro Bowl nod. With Cousins learning from all the different offensive play callers in his career, Robinson has been impressed with the way the 4-time Pro Bowler has been taking information and watching film. Of course, he's a professional at this point. He's been doing this for 12 years. He can recall things from when he had Clint Kubiak as his offensive coordinator. That's a little different, Robinson said. Then obviously recently with Kevin O'Connell, he can kind of take some of those things that he's had with Kevin the last couple of years and apply it to what we're doing here. There's still some new stuff, so he's still learning a few things, but you can see right away how well he sees defenses. Atlanta may not have Cousins available for the start of the season. This is an underrated topic. Due to him suffering the season-ending Achilles in October, the Falcons filled their QB room, though, with Michael Penix Jr. at number 8 overall. And what if Michael Penix has to start week 1 because Kirk Cousins isn't ready? We talked about Kirk Cousins maybe getting hurt and then a spark. We didn't even consider the fact that Michael Penix could start week 1, and what if he lights it up? You know, Tom Grassi says, but what if he kind of sucks? What if he kind of doesn't? What if he kind of doesn't? Right? That's going to be a really hard benching if Kirk Cousins, and you got to know, Kirk Cousins knows this. Like this is something I'm sure Kirk Cousins is aware of, and he is like looking at that timetable of a recovery, and he's like, we got to be ready by September 5th. Like we have to be ready. I can't let that kid go out there, right? I just signed this big contract. The Falcons are underway with offseason team activities, and Cousins participating in non-contact sessions is a step in the right direction. As Robinson heads into his first training camp in June, Cousins has faith in his new offensive coordinator as they both enter their first season. This is what Kirk Cousins said. I think Zach has a great football mind. I think he's a hard worker, and I think he's got a great way about him. He shops at Kohl's. Just kidding. These guys respond to him. We're checking a lot of boxes from that standpoint. It's about us. As players, we keep saying the same thing, that we've got to put in the work to build, to build that shared history so we can play in such a way this fall that it looks like we've been together for 5 years. So it is kind of a race to try to see how quick these guys can get ready, and not just mentally, but physically for Kirk Cousins. And then Bill said, good point. Kirk better be ready by camp or he might get cooked. And yeah, we'll see what happens there. A lot of people are wondering what's going on with Derrick Henry. Some people say he's regressed the last 2 seasons. Maybe you could say that, but okay, he regressed from being a Hall of Famer. He's still a really, really hell of a good player. And the real question was, okay, if you play fantasy football, you probably wonder, how are the Ravens going to use Derrick Henry? Is he just going to be kind of like how Ezekiel Elliott was on the Patriots, where it's just like a different team and it just things get a little weird really quick? Derrick Henry rapidly declines. That is not the plan in Baltimore. Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator, said today, we're having hell of a year with Derrick Henry, and he's going to get 300 carries in 2024. So Derrick Henry, a workhorse running back. He signed a 2-year, $16 million contract with the Ravens, $9 million guaranteed. And now he's going to go be the workhorse that he's been for Tennessee all these years in Baltimore. This is not a, we're gonna like fit him in and he's gonna split. He's going to be a workhorse for the Ravens. No NFL running back has more carries than Derrick Henry since 2018. And Todd Monken hopes the trend continues in the running back's first season. I know Henry, and this is what Monken said Thursday via the team's website. I know this. If Henry carries it 300 times, we're having hell of a year. It means we're running it a lot. It means we're up in games. We want him to finish. We want him to be the closer. It's a conceivable feat in 2024 as Henry joins a Baltimore club that had the NFL's best rushing attack in 3 of the last 5 years. A lot of that has to do with Lamar Jackson, including a 2023 campaign where the Ravens topped the NFL in carries, 541 carries last year, while earning the AFC number 1 seed. Remarkably, the Ravens' recent rushing prowess has been accomplished without a bell cow like Henry. Lamar Jackson's dual threat capabilities have been a major quality to an effort that's been strategized with a running back by committee approach. You have to go back to 2010 to find a Ravens running back that has eclipsed the 300 carries in a season. So they're saying right off the bat, hey, we're going to try to do something with Derrick Henry that we haven't done in 14 years. So this is what Monken said. I thought we did a good job last year of rotating the running backs. I mean, Gus Edwards was powerful, but we split the reps. Now we had Keaton Mitchell who came on, and we had Justice Hill. Those were all guys that really, played significant roles last season. But I still anticipate the same of using all of our backs and trying to put them in the best positions to be successful. Henry, who leads the league in rushing yards, carries, and touchdowns since 2018, figures to be up for the workload if Baltimore can successfully establish a fruitful rushing attack early in games and allow its new bruiser to close the show with the lead. And another thing, when Derrick Henry was with the Titans, one of the stats that I thought was most impressive about Derrick Henry is that his average yards per carry went up in the second half, meaning he was wearing defenses down with the bruiser style of runner that he is. So, I mean, you talk about a closer, that stat right there tells you that this guy is the definition of a closer. And it's what the Ravens seemingly missed at the end of last year's playoff run. Their 17-0 defeat against the Super Bowl champion Chiefs saw an inconsistent rushing attack that was ditched early and produced just 6 attempts by a running back. You guys remember that, right? Only 6 attempts by a running. I just can't believe that. How does that even happen? Even in a close one-score affair, the lack of confidence rushing the football forced the issue on Lamar Jackson to make plays in any which he could. Of course, injuries played a role in that last-ditch effort in the AFC title game. J.K. Dobbins' season was over after 1 game, and Keaton Mitchell blossoming ended abruptly in Week 15. The Ravens hope to rectify that by bringing in Henry, which would also take some of the pressure off Jackson. And let's just take a moment to remember something. If the Ravens, as good as they were last season, they lost their starting running back, and then they lost another running back in Week 15. Like that was a team that was supposed to have, those players on the field in a perfect world. And what would the Ravens have looked like with a legitimate rushing attack in that game? I think they could have beaten the Chiefs, right? It's not crazy when a team this loaded gets somebody like Derrick Henry. When you talk about, okay, he is the piece that's going to take us over the top. That's Derrick Henry, okay? I mean, he's only 30 years old. right? He must be the oldest 30-year-old in the NFL, especially when you consider tread and wear and tear. The only question that remains is if the 30-year-old can handle the workload in what will be his 9th NFL season. First and foremost, like every player, we want him to make it through this season. It's a long season, 17 games. The NFL just talked about expanding it to 18 games. Monk instead of Henry, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, he's really durable. Henry is the clear-cut RB1 for the Ravens team that won't return Gus Edwards and Dobbins in 2024. Justice Hill figures to be second in line with the 5th-round rookie Rasheen Ali behind him on the depth chart to start the season. Mitchell has already been ruled out ruled out of a week 1 return by John Harbaugh, but is on schedule in his recovery from an ACL tear and is expected to return at some point during the season. But right off the bat, week 1, it's going to be the Derrick Henry show. And an opportunity will be there for Derrick Henry to make history this year. He's only 498 rushing yards shy of becoming the 32nd player in NFL history to reach the 10,000-yard mark. Should he eclipse that mark along with 10 rushing touchdowns this season, Henry would become the 9th player in NFL history to have 10,000 career rushing yards and 100 career rushing touchdowns. He would join Hall of Famers LaDainian Tomlinson, Emmitt Smith, and Jim Brown as the only ones to do so before 31 years old, according to NFL research. All right, this is a Hall of Famer that's only 30 years old. This could be the piece that takes him over. When free agency began, Henry to Baltimore was a match made in heaven, and it was no shock when Baltimore officially landed the league's leading active rusher. For a Ravens team looking to get over the hump, Henry could potentially be the one to get them there. And it pains me to say this, but it's all true. It's all true. Now, I hope it doesn't work out. I hope Henry has a really good season. I just hope the Ravens don't win their playoff games. Me and Bill have this thing. We don't like the Ravens. It is what it is, right? It's resentment. But yeah, that was my final story to cover today. And now it is time for the talk about a guy that's not over a Super Bowl loss. We see this all the time. People are fueled every single year by losing the Super Bowl. It's probably one of the most terrible feelings ever. If you've been a fan and you've lost in a Super Bowl, you know exactly how it feels. It sucks. It's awful, right? Why do you think Bill doesn't like the Ravens, the 2000 Super Bowl? He's still not over it. Well, let's talk about it. There's a player that lost in the Super Bowl last year, and he's not fully over, not just that Super Bowl, either of the Super Bowl losses. And that man is Fred Warner. I mean, especially when you lose it twice at the same team. Niners linebacker Fred Warner revealed on Wednesdays, the insiders, that he's still trying to get past the result of the Super Bowl. And he's not yet over the last Super Bowl defeat against the Kansas City Chiefs either. This is what he said. He told NFL Network's Judy Batista and Steve Wyke on NFL Network. Yeah, not fully over it for sure. That one's going to sting for a long time. I'm not even over the first one. So I'm sure that this last one was like 3 months ago. I'm still not over it. Those things stay with you. In this league, you earn scars throughout the league. You face adversity losing a Super Bowl. And of course, as big as that adversity that you could hit, and it stays with you, it makes you stronger. It makes you better. I know I'll be better from it. I've watched it several times. I've seen different plays that we could have made to win that game. You just got to be better next time. It's not a matter of if in my mind. It's a matter of when. When do we go win one? Warner's not the only 49er to feel motivated by the loss. Cornerback Trevarius Ward said that the setback is making him and the team a little hungrier heading into this next season. And if you're in an NFC conference, this is a very, very scary thing to hear. A team as loaded as the 49ers, fueled and angry and motivated. And it's like, yeah, well, they've been that every single season and it hasn't paid out. Eventually it's going to, right? Brock Purdy didn't look terrible in the Super Bowl. He didn't look like he didn't belong there. He didn't look like, like Blake Bortles in the AFC. Yeah, Blake Bortles wasn't that bad in that AFC championship, but he didn't look like Rex Grossman. He didn't look like somebody that just, okay, we got to move on from this guy. Like, he played the part. He looked like, he took that team into overtime. Like, Brock Purdy has everything that it takes to win a Super Bowl. So the 49ers, I mean, and now they brought in another pass rusher. Nick Bosa is probably going to be Defensive Player of the Year. Last year, there wasn't a real threat on the other side. They brought in Chase Young for a little bit, but now they have a real threat on the other side. Defensively, they're going to be a much better team, I think. They got a new defensive coordinator. They parted ways with Steve Wilkes after one season. The 49ers are going to be ready to roll week 1, and that's what makes the Jets game so fun, right? Because the Jets have all the expectations. It's almost like these teams are almost like, in a way, they're mirror image of each other. Really great on defense, great weapons on offense, star quarterbacks, Super Bowl expectations right off the bat. The one thing is that the 49ers have been playing together now going into Brock Purdy's third year. And, he played week 12 to week 18 his first year, and then a whole season under his belt. And now he's going into what will be Rodgers' first football game, and they're going to play each other. So Warner's still confident that Sorensen will get San Francisco's defense back on track, their new defensive coordinator. This is what Warner said. Yeah, Nick is great, man. I love the hire. Nick has been a part of this organization for a couple of years now. He's been heavily involved with the linebackers, and he's played the game for a long time. He's just been a true player's coach. He knows what it's supposed to look like. I think he's obviously been around our scheme for a long time, so we'll be able to shore up some things that we were lacking last year. And we can get back to playing dominant 49ers defensive football. That's been the standard since I've been here. And this is what makes it different. You see sometimes, okay, the 49ers, they make it to the Super Bowl, then they fire their defensive coordinator. But this was a situation where the 49ers felt like they had somebody else on staff that the players would even reach a further potential with, right? This isn't like, oh, they just fired this guy, brought in somebody new, and they're hoping that he learns the scheme really quick. This isn't like, the situations with the offensive coordinators that we previously talked about. Can they get up to speed? Can Will Levis? And no. This is a player that everybody was probably at some point during the season, a guy that stood up in the meetings, a guy that paused the film and brought things to the attention. And Kyle Shanahan's thinking probably, why isn't this guy the defensive coordinator? Right. And that's why Warner's like, dude, I love this hire. This is a player's coach, right? Antonio Pierce, player's coach. This is a person that we want to play for. And just the language that's being used is not like, hopefully it works out. It's like, no, we're going to get back to playing dominant 49ers defensive football. And this coach is definitely going to get us back there. He's been around the scheme for a long time. So I just expect the 49ers, to be maybe even better than they were last year. And that's going to probably take them to the Super Bowl. NFC Championship game at a minimum, probably. It's hard because the NFC is much tougher. It's like Dan Campbell and what he said after losing in that NFC Championship game. He said it's going to be a lot harder to get here next year. The Green Bay Packers have something to say about it. The Giants are not the Giants. Sorry, Bill, not this year. The Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers, the Philadelphia Eagles, even the Cowboys. Those are all teams that are going to be trying to make some noise. You got Atlanta, who's got really high expectations. That's not me. But there are people out there with really high expectations for Atlanta with all those weapons and Kirk Cousins. But what about Baker Mayfield? What about Tampa? Right? There's just a lot of power from that. And we haven't even talked about Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and the Rams. Matthew Stafford trying to get one more ring before he retires. I mean, the NFC is going to be very difficult next year. So the 49ers do have a mountain to climb, but I think that they have everything that they need to climb that mountain. It's like, look, all those teams that I just mentioned, very, very good. But are any of them better than the 49ers? That's the question. Now, the one thing I will say is, like, I think Jared Goff could outplay Brock Purdy. Jordan Love could be the MVP of the year next year. And people don't realize, I think it was from week 10 to week 17. Jordan Love threw like 22 touchdown passes and 3 interceptions or something crazy. I think it was 18-2. I did the numbers today and I was like, well, what if Jordan Love had been playing at that kind of a level? Because that's not like, he got lucky and threw 4 touchdown passes for 3 weeks straight. And, I'm like, okay, well, let's just do 12, times 5, because that's 15, and then add, 8 more. I'm not doing that. I'm saying we're taking a 10-game sample size from the moment that we saw a light bulb click with Jordan Love, a moment that actually a page was turned, the aha moment on the field. Okay, let's start there and go to the end of the year. Okay, and you do those numbers. I did them today on my calculator. It was equal to like 39.7 touchdown passes in the season and 6 interceptions. For reference, that would have led the NFL in touchdown passes this year. And not only that, the 6 interceptions is insanely low, meaning he's not making terrible decisions. Besides that last pass of the NFL NFC Championship, or that was the divisional round, but still, Jordan Love has turned the page, and if he can play at the level that he played at last season, going into another year in the system, another year with these young receivers and tight ends, like Jordan Love could be the guy that has the best quarterback season of any guy in the league this year. And I don't think anybody that watched the Packers in the postseason and late last season would argue that, unless you're, I don't know, a Bears fan. And Embrace the Struggle says, Jordan is legit. And he said, Kirk Cousins can never seem to avoid Lincoln Financial Field week 2. Very true. And even in spite of losing the Rockies, Phillies are still 37-15. And said it was time for a change update. Not sure how long I'll keep it, but hopefully it won't be too synonymous with the Eagle and the Lion. And then Bill said, Eli knows all about the Crows here. But yeah, man, NFC is going to be an absolute monster. AFC, and I say this every offseason. I don't know if you guys agree, but I always feel like every offseason, the NFL is better, right? Every single year, it's like, oh man, whether it was, 2021, bringing in, Trevor Lawrence, and then in 2022, or was it 2021 that they also brought in Joe Burrow. But you look at these young quarterbacks that have come into the league: Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, even Tua. And then you have your like Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, and then even like your old veteran quarterbacks that you didn't expect to be good, like Geno Smith, and Jared Goff is taking his level to a point where they gave him a huge contract. It seems like every single year the NFL just gets a ton better. Now you bring in Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels. I mean, it's just a lot of excitement, but it does feel like, man, it's going to be hard to win any game, and they say any given Sunday for a reason, but truly this year, any given Sunday, it might just be even more true than it's ever been, because I go down my schedule as a Broncos fan and I'm like, yeah, we have one game that might be winnable. I mean, they're all winnable, but you get what I'm saying. We play the Panthers once. But, I mean, Steelers, Seahawks, Jets, Raiders, Chargers, Chiefs, Ravens, Bengals. Like, these are, you go down and you're just like, yeah, this is going to be a nightmare. And we don't even have one of the more difficult schedules. Like the Steelers, look at the Steelers schedule. It is brutal. Absolutely brutal. So we're gonna definitely be talking more about that. Thank you guys for tuning in this evening. I hope you guys enjoyed the Friday night episode. I wanted to come on a Friday night and just surprise you guys with it. No announcement or anything. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Definitely check out some of these interviews. I did 2 interviews today, one with somebody from the Philippines, and I did another one that I thought was my favorite one, and that's episode 5. You can check out those interviews on my personal YouTube channel, which is Kyle Kitzman. So it's just simple as typing that in the YouTube bar, and you can see all those. Honestly, I'm really enjoying that series over there. And I just created a brand new intro for the series. I've been tweaking it a little bit, but I'm really excited about it. And I actually, you know what? I'm going to show you guys it actually. Why not? This is what Friday nights are for. So let's see. It was about 8:02. Yeah, I would say 8:02. This is probably the one. Yep, because I went live probably. All right, here we go. I'm loading it up. Tell me what you guys think. This is what I'm going to play when I start off. I added a picture of me in the Broncos helmet at the combine, and I tweaked with the timing of the music and stuff like that. So here it is.
There's only 4 words. This one's for John. This one's for Pat.
Yeah, I get pumped up every time I see it, but I can't tell if it's because I'm a Broncos fan. So feedback is greatly appreciated. And Bill with the super chat, $2. Thank you for the show today, Bill. Man, you don't have you already done enough. No more. No, I appreciate it. And honestly, it was my pleasure. Especially, I mean, after talking about the Broncos on that channel, it felt good to talk about some of the other other teams and the other situations and kind of branch outside of this little Bronco bubble. Although I'm really enjoying the series at the same time. It was awesome to do both today. And Edub said, I caught you on your channel earlier, fell back asleep, no worries. And Bill said it's a good intro. And I think we got similar feedback here from Embrace the Struggle. Sounds like a motivational workout, toxic masculinity channel. Can I sub? I'm kidding. But seriously, guys, thank you for being here. Please like the video as a reminder on your way out if you haven't. And I will see you guys soon. So take care. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your Memorial Day. I'll see you guys before then. But if you don't see me, enjoy your Memorial Day, and I'll see you guys next time. So